I'm Lauren, 32, and I thought I knew what love felt like. Standing in Hawaii, the air thick with plumeria and promise I was there for my sister-in-law's wedding, my heart full. The sunset painted the sky gold, and I could still feel the warmth of my husband Nathan's hand in mine on the flight over. But his silence that night, the way his eyes dodged mine, it planted a seed of doubt. I found a hibiscus flower in my bag, his gift now heavy with questions. What moment shook your trust? Share where you're watching from below, and let's unravel this together. Hit like and subscribe to join my journey. The rehearsal dinner was alive with laughter, the kind that spills over like champagne. I stood in the hotel's open-air pavilion, fairy lights, twinkling above the ocean, whispering nearby. Sadie, my sister-in-law, was radiant, her voice bright as she toasted with her bridesmaids. I tried to match their energy, smiling as I clinked glasses, but my eyes kept drifting to Nathan. He'd been quiet all day, his jaw tight. Not the man who danced with me at our own wedding. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just the stress of travel. I was chatting with one of Sadie's friends, Maya, about her seashell earrings when Nathan grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm enough to make me spill a bit of wine. He pulled me toward the edge of the pavilion, away from the chatter. The air felt heavier there, the ocean's hum louder. His face was all sharp angles in the dim light, his brown eyes unreadable. "Lauren," he said, his voice low, "you need to go back to LA, now." I laughed, thinking it was some weird joke. "What, Nathan, we're here for? Sadie's wedding. What are you talking about?" My smile faltered as he didn't laugh back. His lips pressed into a thin line and he glanced over his shoulder like someone might be listening. "I'm serious," he said. "You need to leave tonight." My stomach twisted. I set my glass on a nearby table, the clink too loud in my ears. "Why, Nathan? What's going on?" I searched his face for the man I knew, the one who'd leave sticky notes on my coffee mug with silly doodles. But this Nathan was a stranger, his gaze darting away. "There's no time to explain," he snapped, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "Just go." I felt my chest tighten like the air was too thick to breathe. "No time to explain," I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "Nathan, we're married. You don't get to just order me around like this. Tell me what's happening." My hands were shaking now and I crossed my arms to hide it. He ran a hand through his hair, something he did when he was cornered, but he didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the crowd, his shoulders stiff. Sadie must have noticed because she broke away from her bridesmaids and hurried over her white dress, catching the light. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking between us. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, like she sensed the tension. Nathan's jaw clenched. "It's fine, Sadie," he said, but his tone was ice. "Go back to your party." I opened my mouth to protest, to beg Sadie to stay, but she hesitated, her smile fading. The bridesmaids were watching now, their laughter quieter, and I felt their eyes like pinpricks. "Nathan, don't talk to her like that," I said, stepping closer to him. "This is her weekend, and you're scaring me. Just tell me what's wrong." He didn't look at me. "Lauren, I'm handling it. You need to trust me and go." His words hit like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they were empty. Trust him. After 5 years, 2 moves, and countless late-night talks, he was shutting me out. I felt a lump in my throat, but I swallowed it, refusing to let tears come. Sadie touched my arm, her fingers light. "Lauren, maybe you two should talk somewhere private," she suggested. But Nathan cut her off. "No," he said, his voice final. "She's leaving. That's it." He pulled out his phone, his fingers moving fast, and I realized he was already booking a flight. My flight, without even asking me. The pavilion felt like it was spinning, the fairy lights blurring into streaks. I clutched the wilted hibiscus flower I'd tucked into my purse earlier, its petals soft and bruised. It was supposed to be a sweet memory of this trip, but now it felt like a warning I'd ignored. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the weight of everyone's stares held me back. Maya whispered something to another bridesmaid, and I caught the word drama. My face burned. I wasn't the one causing this. Nathan was. But he was already walking away, his phone to his ear, leaving me standing there with Sadie, who looked as lost as I felt. "I don't understand," I whispered more to myself than to her. She squeezed my arm. "He's been off all week," she said quietly. But I didn't think it was this bad. Her words sank in heavy and cold. All week. What else had I missed? I looked at the hibiscus in my hand, its red fading to gray, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just a moment. This was the start of something unraveling. I stood frozen in the pavilion. Sadie's hand still on my arm, her touch the only thing keeping me grounded. Nathan was already halfway across the room, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low murmur I couldn't catch. The crowd's chatter had dulled to a hum, but I felt their glances sharp and curious, slicing through the warm Hawaiian air. My throat burned with questions I couldn't voice, not here, not with everyone watching. Sadie gave me a small, worried smile. "Let's get you some water," she said, guiding me toward the bar. I nodded, numb, my fingers still clutching the wilted hibiscus. The bar was tucked in a corner lined with tropical flowers and flickering candles. The bartender, a young woman with a kind face, slid a glass of water my way without a word. I stared at the ice cubes, watching them shift and melt, my mind racing. What was Nathan hiding? Was it work money? Something worse? 5 years of marriage, and I'd never seen him like this, distant, almost afraid. Sadie leaned close, her voice soft. "He's been weird for days, Lauren. I thought it was just the wedding stress, but now..." She trailed off, her eyes flicking toward Nathan, who was pacing near the pavilion's entrance. I followed her gaze, my heart sinking. He wasn't just pacing. He was arguing, his free hands slicing through the air, his face tight with something I couldn't name. Fear, anger. I strained to hear, catching only fragments. "Keep it quiet, and not now." My stomach churned. "What does that mean?" I whispered more to myself than Sadie. She shook her head, her curls bouncing slightly. "I don't know. He's been taking calls at odd hours. I overheard him last night, something about a deadline." Her words hit like stones, each one sinking deeper. A deadline. For what I thought of our life back in LA, our cozy house, our shared routines. Had I missed something glaring, some crack in our foundation? I took a sip of water, the cold shocking my throat. The bartender, whose name tag read Clara, leaned over, her voice gentle. "You okay, hun? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her concern caught me off guard, and for a moment I wanted to spill everything, but I just shook my head, forcing a smile. "Long night," I said, my voice thinner than I meant. Clara nodded like she understood and slipped a small coffee-to-go cup across the bar. "For the road," she said, her eyes warm. I didn't know what she meant. How could she know I was leaving, but I took it, grateful for the small kindness. The cup was warm in my hands, a stark contrast to the chill spreading through me. Sadie touched my shoulder. "You should talk to him again," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I looked at Nathan, still on his phone, his back to me now. The man I loved, the one who'd carried me over the threshold of our first apartment, felt like a stranger. I wanted to march over, demand answers, but my legs felt heavy, rooted to the floor. Instead, I followed Sadie back to our hotel room, the coffee cup still in my hand. The hallway was quiet, the carpet muffling our steps. Inside, the room smelled of coconut lotion and sunscreen, remnants of the carefree day I'd expected. My suitcase sat by the bed, half unpacked, my dress for the wedding draped over a chair. I stared at it, a soft blue thing I'd picked because Nathan said it made my eyes pop. Now it felt like a relic from another life. Nathan came in minutes later, his face still closed off. "Flight's booked," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Red Eye leaves in 3 hours." He tossed his phone on the bed and started grabbing my things, my sandals, my toiletry bag, like he was in a race. I stood there watching him pack my life away, my voice stuck in my throat. "Nathan, stop," I finally said, my hands clenched. "You can't just send me away like this. I deserve to know why." He paused, his hand on my sweater, but didn't look up. "Lauren, please," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I'm trying to protect you. Just go. Protect me." From what? The words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were vague, a wall I couldn't climb. I grabbed my purse. my fingers brushing the photo I'd found earlier, a snapshot of us on our first Hawaii trip, laughing on a beach. The memory felt like a lie now, the joy in his smile a cruel echo. I started packing the rest myself, my hands trembling as I folded shirts I wouldn't need. Every movement felt final, like I was closing a chapter I didn't understand. Nathan watched silent, his arms crossed. I wanted to shake him, to scream until he told me the truth, but the weight of his secrecy pressed me down. As I zipped my suitcase, I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale eyes wide, a woman I barely recognized. The coffee from Clara sat on the nightstand, untouched, its warmth fading. I picked it up, needing something to hold on to. Whatever Nathan was hiding, it was bigger than me, bigger than us. And as I wheeled my suitcase toward the door, I felt the first threads of our marriage start to fray. The plane's engines hummed a low drone that matched the ache in my chest. I sat by the window, the red-eye flight to LA cloaking the world in darkness. The Pacific stretched below, endless and unyielding, swallowing any hope I had of understanding Nathan's words, "Protect me," from what his voice echoed in my head, sharp and distant, as I gripped the coffee cup Clara had given me. It was cold now, like everything else. My reflection in the window stared back, hollow eyes, lips pressed tight. I pulled my sweater closer, the cabin air biting my skin. The seat next to me was occupied by an older woman, her gray hair tucked into a neat bun. She was knitting, the click of her needles steady, almost soothing. I tried to focus on that to anchor myself, but my mind spiraled. Was Nathan cheating, hiding a debt? Every late night at his office, every vague excuse about work replayed like a bad movie. I'd trusted him, built a life with him, and now I was on a plane, sent away like a child. My phone buzzed in my lap. A text from Sadie. "Nathan's still acting weird. Won't talk to anyone. Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Okay, I was the opposite of okay. I typed a quick reply. "I don't know what's happening. Call me when you can," and hit send before I could overthink it. The plane's Wi-Fi was spotty, but the message went through, a small relief in the chaos. The woman next to me glanced over, her eyes soft but curious. "Trouble at home?" she asked, her voice warm like a grandmother offering tea. I hesitated, my instinct to brush her off, warring with the need to talk. "Something like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her needles pausing. "I've been there," she said. "My husband, 40 years ago, he had secrets. Turned out he was gambling our savings away. Broke my heart before I fixed it." Her words landed like a punch. Gambling. Was that Nathan's secret? I pictured our house, our shared bank account, the life we'd scraped together. Could he have thrown it all away? "How did you know?" I asked, leaning closer despite myself. She smiled, sad and knowing. He stopped, looking me in the eye. "Sounds like your man's doing the same." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Nathan hadn't looked at me, not really, not since we landed in Hawaii. I thought of his tense shoulders, his clipped words. The woman, Margaret, she said her name was, went back to knitting, but her story clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake. I opened my purse, digging for something to ground me, and found a crumpled note. Nathan's handwriting from months ago. "You're my home." I'd kept it like a treasure, a reminder of his love. Now it felt like a cruel joke. I stuffed the note back, my hands trembling. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, the seatbelt sign dinging above. My coffee cup slid slightly and I grabbed it, needing something solid. Margaret glanced over again. "Whatever it is," she said, "you'll face it. Women always do." Her words were meant to comfort, but they only sharpened my fear. Face what I didn't even know what I was walking into. I closed my eyes, trying to piece it together. Nathan's late nights, his whispered calls, the way he'd snapped at Sadie. And now sending me away without a word. I imagined the worst: an affair, a scam, a lie so big it could unravel everything. My chest ached, not just with fear but with anger. How dare he shut me out? 5 years of marriage, of choosing each other, and he thought he could handle this, whatever. This was alone. The plane's lights dimmed, most passengers dozing now. I couldn't sleep, not with my heart pounding like this. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through old texts from Nathan. Love you, babe. See you tonight. Don't forget the milk. Normal mundane messages that felt like relics now. Then I saw one from a week ago. Need to sort something out. Don't worry. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it glared at me, a warning I'd ignored. Margaret's knitting needles clicked on steady as a heartbeat. I wanted to ask her more, to borrow her strength, but I didn't. Instead, I stared at the note in my purse, its edges worn from my touch. You're my home. If that was true, why was I flying away from him toward a truth I wasn't sure I could face? The plane dipped slightly and my stomach lurched, not from the turbulence, but from the dread pooling inside me. The plane landed at LAX just as dawn broke the sky a bruised purple. I shuffled through the terminal, my suitcase dragging behind me, its wheels scraping the floor. Exhaustion weighed me down, but my mind wouldn't stop churning. Nathan's words, "I'm trying to protect you," felt like a riddle I couldn't solve. Protect me from what? From him. From us. I hailed a cab, the driver's radio playing a soft jazz tune that grated against my nerves. I gave him our address, my voice flat, and sank into the seat. The city blurred past palm trees and billboards glowing faintly in the early light. I clutched my phone, checking for messages. Nothing from Nathan. Sadie hadn't called either. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I opened my wallet, pulling out the photo from our first Hawaii trip, the one I'd found in my purse. Nathan's arm around me, his grin wide, the ocean sparkling behind us. I traced his face with my thumb, my chest tightening. Was that man gone? The cab pulled up to our house. A small craftsman we'd painted blue last summer. The sight of it usually warmed me, but now it looked wrong, like a stage set for someone else's life. I paid the driver, my hands clumsy, and stepped out. The air was cool, smelling of dew and eucalyptus. I wheeled my suitcase to the porch, my heart thudding. The front door was ajar, just a crack, but enough to make my breath catch. I froze, my hand hovering over the knob. I pushed the door open slow, the hinges creaking. The living room was a wreck. Couch cushions, slashed bookshelves, toppled papers scattered like leaves. My knees buckled and I gripped the door frame to steady myself. Someone had been here. Someone had torn through our home. I stepped inside, glass crunching under my sneakers. A lamp lay shattered, its shade crumpled. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out the morning quiet. I fumbled for my phone, dialing Nathan. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Nathan, what the hell is going on?" I hissed, my voice shaking. "Our house is trashed. Where are you?" I hung up, my hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to call the police, but something stopped me. Nathan's voice. "Don't tell anyone yet." Why? What was he hiding? I moved through the room, my eyes scanning the chaos. A framed photo of us at our wedding lay face down, the glass cracked. I picked it up, my throat burning. We'd been so happy that day, dancing under string lights, promising forever. Now our home was a crime scene, and my husband was a ghost. I set the photo down, my fingers lingering on the frame, and noticed something else. A drawer from the coffee table yanked out, its contents spilled. Among the pens and receipts was a small key, one I didn't recognize. I picked it up, turning it over in my palm. It was heavy, old, not like the sleek keys we used. What did it open? A safe, a lockbox. My mind raced, conjuring secrets Nathan had kept. I shoved the key in my pocket, my anger flaring. He'd sent me here alone into this mess. Was this his idea of protection? I wanted to scream, to tear through the house myself, but fear held me back. What if whoever did this was still here? A noise, a soft thump, came from the backyard. My heart stopped. I grabbed a heavy bookend from the floor, its weight cold in my hand, and crept toward the sliding glass door. The curtains were half open, revealing our small patio, the chairs tipped over. I squinted into the dim light, my breath shallow. Nothing moved, but the thump came again, sharper. I tightened my grip on the bookend, my palms sweaty. Before I could step outside, a shadow passed the window, a man, his silhouette tall and broad. I gasped. stumbling back, the bookend slipping from my hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud. My phone buzzed and I nearly screamed. A text from Nathan. "I'm sorry. I'll explain soon. Stay safe." Stay safe. Our house was destroyed, a stranger was outside, and he was in Hawaii, leaving me to face this alone. I backed away from the door, my eyes locked on the shadow, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. My breath caught in my throat, the shadow outside the glass door looming larger, its edges blurred by the morning haze. I stumbled back, my sneakers slipping on the scattered papers, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The bookend I'd dropped lay useless on the floor, and I cursed myself for letting it go. Nathan's text. Stay safe. Burned in my mind, a hollow promise. Safe in our ransacked home with a stranger steps away, I crouched behind the couch, my hands shaking as I dialed 911, whispering our address to the operator, my voice barely steady. The shadow moved slow and deliberate toward the patio table. I peeked over the couch, my eyes straining. It was a man, tall, his hoodie obscuring his face. He wasn't rushing, wasn't breaking anything, just standing there like he belonged. My stomach twisted. Was this who Nathan was protecting me from? I clutched the key I'd found in the drawer, its cold metal biting my palm, a lifeline to answers I didn't have. A car door slammed outside, and the shadow froze, then slipped into the backyard's shadows. My knees buckled with relief, and it was short-lived. Footsteps crunched on the gravel driveway, and a voice called out, "Lauren, you home?" It was Greg, our neighbor, his tone worried but familiar. I exhaled, my hands still trembling, and stood brushing dust off my jeans. "In here," I called, my voice cracking. Greg appeared at the front door, his flannel shirt wrinkled, his eyes wide as he took in the mess. "Jesus, what happened?" he asked, stepping over a broken vase. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words stuck. How could I explain this? My husband sent me home to a crime scene, and I didn't even know why. "I don't know," I said, my voice small. "Someone broke in. I just got here." Greg's face hardened. "You call the cops?" I nodded, and he scanned the room, his gaze landing on the open sliding door. "Stay here," he said, starting toward it. Panic flared in my chest. "No, Greg, don't," I said, grabbing his arm. "There was someone out there. Just wait for the police." He hesitated, then nodded, but his eyes kept darting to the backyard like he expected the shadow to reappear. I sank onto the arm of the couch, my legs weak. The key in my pocket pressed against my thigh, a nagging reminder of Nathan's secrets. I pulled it out, turning it over its tarnished surface, catching the faint light. Greg noticed. "What's that?" he asked, his brow furrowing. I shrugged, not ready to share. "Just something I found," I said, slipping it back into my pocket. My eyes drifted to the hallway where my jewelry box sat on a console table, its lid flung open, contents gutted. I walked over, my heart sinking. My grandmother's heirloom necklace, a delicate silver chain with a sapphire pendant, was gone. It was the one thing I'd begged Nathan to keep safe, a piece of my family's history. I touched the empty velvet lining, my throat tightening. "They took it," I whispered, more to myself than Greg. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "I'm sorry, Lauren. Cops will be here soon. They'll figure this out." But I wasn't so sure. This wasn't just a random break-in. Nathan's urgency, his cryptic texts, the key, they all pointed to something bigger, something he'd hidden from me. I moved to the hallway closet where we kept our safe, my hands trembling as I punched in the code. The door swung open, revealing empty shelves. Papers, cash, even Nathan's old watch gone. My breath hitched, and I slammed the safe shut, the sound echoing in the quiet house. Greg was on his phone talking to someone, probably his wife. I barely heard him. My eyes caught on the kitchen doorway where a trail of crumbs led to the counter. Our anniversary cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, sat there half-eaten, a knife stuck in it like a taunt. The frosting was smeared as if someone had dragged their fingers through it. I stared, my stomach churning. Who does that? Who breaks in, steals your life, and eats your cake? A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. I turned back to the living room, my gaze landing on the wedding album still open on the floor. Nathan's smile in that photo, so wide and warm, felt like a betrayal now. I knelt, picking it up, my fingers brushing the cracked glass. 5 years of love, of promises, and he'd sent me into this nightmare alone. The sirens were closer now. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding out a truth I couldn't face. Nathan wasn't just hiding something. He'd broken us. Police lights flashed through the living room windows, painting the walls red and blue. I stood by the couch, clutching the wedding album, its weight heavy in my hands. Officer Bailey, a stocky man with a notepad, stepped inside, his boots crunching on the debris. Greg hovered nearby, explaining what he'd seen, but I barely listened. My eyes kept darting to the kitchen, to that smeared cake, its presence mocking me. The officer's voice cut through my haze. "Ma'am, can you walk me through what happened?" I opened my mouth, but my phone buzzed in my pocket, sharp and insistent. Nathan's name lit up the screen. My heart lurched, a mix of rage and desperation. I answered, stepping away from Bailey, my voice low. "Nathan, you better have answers. Our house is destroyed, and you're not here." His breath was ragged on the other end, like he'd been running. "Lauren, I'm so sorry," he said, his words rushed. "I didn't want this. Didn't want what I snapped, my voice breaking. You sent me here. You knew something was wrong, didn't you?" Officer Bailey glanced over his pen, pausing, and I turned away, lowering my voice. "Talk to me, Nathan. Now." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I can't. Not yet. Just don't say anything to the cops." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking. Don't say anything. He was treating me like a liability, not a wife. My chest burned, the betrayal sinking deeper. I shoved the phone back in my pocket, the key I'd found digging into my hip. Officer Bailey cleared his throat. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. I forced a nod, but my face felt hot, like he could see right through me. "Just my husband," I said, my voice tight. "He's out of town." Bailey jotted something down, then started asking about the break-in. I answered mechanically when I'd arrived what was missing, but my mind was elsewhere. Nathan's call, his plea to stay quiet. It was a confession of guilt. He'd orchestrated this, hadn't he? Sent me home to face the wreckage of his lies. I glanced at the album in my hands, its cover worn from years of love. I wanted to throw it across the room, let it shatter like everything else. Greg stepped outside to talk to another officer, leaving me with Bailey. He pointed to the empty safe. "Anything valuable in there?" he asked. I nodded, my throat tight. "Papers, some cash. My husband's watch." I didn't mention the key, didn't trust myself to explain it. Bailey's eyes lingered on me, like he sensed I was holding back. "And your husband?" he said, his tone careful. He didn't mention any trouble, debts, maybe enemies. The word enemies hit like a slap. Nathan with enemies. The man who coached Little League, who mowed our lawn every Sunday. But then I thought of his late-night calls, his whispered arguments in Hawaii. My stomach twisted. No, I lied, my voice barely audible. Nothing like that. Bailey didn't push, but his silence felt heavy, like he knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. I wandered to the dining room, needing space. The table was covered in scattered mail bills we hadn't opened. Among them was a sealed envelope, my name scrawled in Nathan's handwriting. My heart stopped. I tore it open, my fingers clumsy, and pulled out a single sheet. "Lauren, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. There's a debt I couldn't pay. Keep this safe." No signature, no explanation. Just those cryptic words, and a folded receipt tucked inside a withdrawal for $10,000 dated last month. My knees buckled. A debt. $10,000. We'd been saving for a new car, pinching pennies, and he'd drained our account. I pressed the letter to my chest, my breath shallow. The room spun, the police radios crackling in the background. I heard Bailey's voice asking Greg about the neighbors, but it was distant, like I was underwater. Nathan hadn't just hidden this, he'd let it destroy our home, our trust me. I sank into a chair, the letter crumpled in my fist. My eyes landed on a small clay pot on the table, a gift from Nathan's mother, now cracked down the middle. It was the last straw, that stupid pot proof of how far we'd fallen. I wanted to scream to call Nathan back and demand the truth, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of his betrayal. I was alone, surrounded by cops and wreckage, with nothing left but a letter that broke my heart. The police lights faded as Officer Bailey and his partner left their notepads full of my half-truths. Greg lingered by the door, offering to board up the broken window. But I shook my head, my voice hoarse. "I'll handle it," I said, barely believing myself. He nodded, reluctant, and stepped out, leaving me alone with the wreckage. The crumpled letter from Nathan was still in my hand, its words, "A debt I couldn't pay," searing my mind. I sank onto the dining room chair, the cracked clay pot staring back at me, and felt something shift. I was done being a passenger in this mess. I smoothed the letter on the table, my fingers tracing the receipt for $10,000. Nathan's betrayal was real, so was my life, our life. I wasn't going to sit here drowning in questions while he hid in Hawaii. I stood, my legs unsteady but my resolve hardening. The key from the drawer was still in my pocket, its weight a quiet challenge. Whatever it opened, whatever Nathan was hiding, I'd find it myself. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel, my best friend, the one person I could trust to not judge me. Her voice was groggy. She'd been asleep but sharpened when she heard my tone. "Lauren, what's wrong? Where are you?" I paced the dining room, stepping over a shattered picture frame. "I'm at home," I said, my voice low. Someone broke in. "Nathan sent me back from Hawaii and I need you. Can you come over?" She didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. 20 minutes. I hung up my chest, loosening just enough to breathe. Rachel had been there through every storm, my dad's illness, my fights with Nathan. She'd know how to help me think straight. While I waited, I moved to Nathan's desk in the corner of the living room, its surface littered with pens and sticky notes. If there were answers, they'd be here, in the places he thought I'd never look. I opened the top drawer, my hands steady now, driven by a quiet fury. Old receipts, a broken stapler, nothing useful. Then in the back, I found a locked metal box small enough to fit in my palm. My heart skipped. I pulled out the key, its edges worn, and tried it. The lock clicked open, and inside was a single flash drive labeled "Backup" in Nathan's handwriting. My stomach tightened. A backup of what bank record secrets? I clutched it, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. The doorbell rang and I jumped, shoving the flash drive in my pocket. Rachel stood on the porch, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her eyes wide as she took in the chaos. "Oh, Lauren," she said, pulling me into a hug. Her warmth broke something in me, and I let myself lean into it for a moment, my throat tight. "What happened?" she asked, stepping inside, her sneakers crunching on glass. I led her to the dining room, the letter still on the table. "Nathan sent me home," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "He said it was to protect me, but then I found this." I handed her the letter, watching her face as she read. Her brow furrowed, and she set it down, her eyes meeting mine. "A debt. What kind of debt? And why send you into this?" She gestured at the trashed room, her voice sharp with anger. "I don't know," I said, pulling the flash drive from my pocket. "But I found this in his desk. I think it's got answers." Rachel's eyes narrowed and she nodded, her jaw set. "Then let's see what's on it," she said, grabbing her laptop bag from the floor. We sat at the table, the cracked pot between us, and she plugged in the drive. My heart pounded as the screen lit up, revealing a folder labeled "Accounts." Inside were spreadsheets, dozens of them, with numbers I didn't understand, transfers, withdrawals, names I didn't recognize. One name stood out. Marcus, a business partner Nathan had mentioned years ago, someone he'd fallen out with before we met. My pulse quickened. I opened an email attached to the spreadsheet dated 3 months back. "You owe me, Nathan. Pay up or I'll take everything." The words blurred as my eyes stung. Marcus. Was he the shadow in the backyard? The one who'd torn our home apart? Rachel grabbed my hand, her grip firm. "Lauren, this is bad. We need to find this guy." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce, mirroring the resolve growing in me. I nodded, my fingers tightening around the flash drive. Nathan had left me in the dark, but I wasn't helpless. I'd find Marcus, confront him, and drag the truth into the light no matter how much it hurt. Rachel's laptop hummed softly, the screen casting a pale glow across the dining room table. The spreadsheet stared back at us, rows of numbers and dates, Marcus's name a jagged scar among them. I leaned closer, my eyes burning from exhaustion, but sharp with purpose. The trashed house around us, shattered glass, upturned furniture, felt distant now, like a storm I'd already walked through. I wasn't the woman who'd stumbled into this mess hours ago, paralyzed by Nathan's betrayal. I was done waiting for him to fix it. Rachel scrolled through the emails, her fingers quick. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a message from Marcus dated 2 weeks ago. "You can't run forever, Nathan. I know where you live." My breath caught the words, sinking like stones. He'd been watching us maybe for months. I thought of the shadow in the backyard, the smeared cake, the stolen necklace. This wasn't just a break-in. It was personal. "We need to find him," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. Rachel glanced at me, her eyes searching. "You sure? This guy sounds dangerous." I nodded, my hand closing around the flash drive. "Nathan sent me away to keep me out of this, but I'm already in it. I need to know why." She didn't argue. Just pulled up a search engine and started typing Marcus's name, cross-referencing it with the email address. We found a lead, an old business listing with an address in a rough part of LA, tied to a consulting firm Nathan had worked with years ago. My stomach twisted, but I pushed it down. "That's where we start," I said, standing. Rachel grabbed her keys. "I'm driving," she said, her tone leaving no room for debate. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket, its weight a reminder of the truth I was chasing. The drive to Marcus's address was quiet, the city waking up around us. Dawn had given way to a gray morning, the streets lined with delivery trucks and early commuters. I stared out the window, my mind replaying the past 5 years. Nathan's late nights, his vague excuses about work stuff. I'd trusted him, built a home with him, and now I was driving to confront a man who'd torn it apart. My fingers brushed the key in my pocket, its edges worn smooth. Whatever it unlocked, I'd face it. We pulled up to a rundown apartment complex, its stucco walls peeling, graffiti scrawled across the gate. Rachel parked her hands tight on the wheel. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice soft but firm. I met her eyes, seeing my own fear reflected back. "Yes, I do," I said. "He took my grandmother's necklace. He trashed our home. And Nathan let him." The words came out harder than I meant, but they felt true, like a fire I'd been holding back. We climbed the stairs to apartment 3B, the hallway smelling of stale smoke and mildew. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. I knocked the sound sharp against the quiet. No answer. I knocked again, harder, my knuckles stinging. The door creaked open, and there he was, Marcus, taller than I'd imagined, his face gaunt, eyes bloodshot. He wore a faded t-shirt, a silver ring glinting on his finger identical to one Nathan had worn years ago. My stomach lurched. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, his voice rough, like he hadn't slept in days. I stood taller, my hands clenched. "I'm Nathan's wife," I said, my voice clear. "You broke into our house. You stole from us. I want answers." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Nathan owes me," he said. "More than you know. You think you're here to fix this? You're in over your head, sweetheart." The word, sweetheart, hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. "Then tell me," I said, stepping closer, my voice low. "What does he owe you? Why our home? Why me?" Marcus's smirk faded, replaced by something colder. "He ruined me," he said, his words clipped. 5 years ago, his deal tanked my life. I lost everything, my house, my family. Now it's his turn. He paused, his eyes flicking to Rachel, then back to me. "You want your necklace back? Pay me what he owes. 50 grand. $50,000. My knees buckled, but I caught myself, my nails digging into my palms. Nathan had hidden this, a debt, a grudge, a whole history, and let it fester until it broke us. I wanted to scream, to demand the necklace, but Marcus's eyes were hard, unyielding. "You've got a week," he said, stepping back. "Or I tell everyone what Nathan did." He slammed the door, the sound echoing in the dim hallway. Rachel grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. "We need to go," she whispered, her voice urgent. I nodded my legs, moving on autopilot, but my mind was alight. Marcus's ring, his words, the debt, they were pieces of a puzzle Nathan had kept from me. I wasn't the same woman who'd boarded that red-eye scared and lost. I'd faced Marcus, stared down his threats, and I was still standing. We reached the car, and I slid into the passenger seat, my hands steady now. Rachel started the engine, but I barely heard it. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, its surface cool against my skin. Whatever Nathan had done, whatever he owed, I'd uncover it. Not for him, but for me. I looked out at the crumbling complex, my jaw set, and felt a quiet strength settle in my bones. This wasn't over. The car's engine rumbled as Rachel drove us away from Marcus's apartment, the city's gray sprawl swallowing the crumbling complex behind us. My hands rested in my lap, the flash drive's edges pressing into my palm, a silent reminder of the line I'd crossed. Confronting Marcus had felt like reclaiming something, my voice, my strength, but now in the quiet, a new weight settled over me. What had I done? Stirred a hornet's nest, maybe, and Nathan was still out there, unaware I'd faced his demon. My phone lit up, shattering the silence. Nathan's name on the screen sent a jolt through me. I hesitated, my thumb hovering, then answered, my voice flat. "What do you want?" His response was immediate, panicked. "Lauren, what the hell were you thinking? Marcus sent me a video. You went to his place." My stomach dropped. A video? I pictured Marcus's smirk, his cold eyes, and realized he'd been one step ahead, recording me. Rachel glanced over, her brow furrowed, but I shook my head, focusing on Nathan's voice. "You saw me?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Good. Maybe now you'll tell me the truth." He sighed, heavy and ragged, like he was carrying the world. "You don't understand," he said. "You've made this worse. Marcus is dangerous, and now he's pissed. I sent you home to keep you safe, not to have you play detective." His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they dismissed me. Play detective. I'd faced Marcus alone, walked into his world, because Nathan had left me no choice. "Safe," I said, my voice rising despite the ache in my throat. "Our house is trash, Nathan. My grandmother's necklace is gone. You don't get to lecture me when you're the one hiding things." There was a pause, and I heard voices in the background. Sadie's, maybe, or the wedding party. He was still in Hawaii, living a life I'd been exiled from. "I was trying to fix it," he said, quieter now, almost broken. "Marcus, he's not just some guy. He's tied to something bigger, something I didn't see coming." His vagueness infuriated me, each word a brick in the wall he'd built between us. "Then tell me," I said, gripping the phone. "What's bigger? What did you do?" But he didn't answer, just muttered, "I'll be home tomorrow. Stay away from him, Lauren. Please." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my pulse loud in my ears. Rachel reached over, squeezing my hand. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. I swallowed, my throat dry. "He's mad I went to Marcus. Said I made it worse." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't push, just kept driving the city, blurring past. I leaned back, the flash drive heavy in my pocket, Nathan's words echoing. Made it worse. Had I? Or was he just scared I was getting too close to his truth? Back at the house, the mess felt sharper now, like it was mocking my defiance. Rachel helped me sweep up glass, but my mind was elsewhere. I sat at the kitchen counter, the cracked clay pot still on the dining table, and pulled out the flash drive again. "We didn't finish looking," I said, my voice steady, despite the knot in my chest. Rachel nodded, setting up her laptop. The screen flickered, revealing more files, bank statements, cryptic notes, and one labeled Marcus Agreement. My heart skipped. I opened it, my hands trembling. It was a contract dated 6 years ago between Nathan and Marcus for a real estate deal. The fine print mentioned a loan, high interest, tied to a third party, a name I didn't recognize, but the numbers were staggering. Nathan had signed it, his signature bold and careless. A sticky note on the file read, "If this goes south, we're done." My breath caught. This was the debt, the root of everything, and Nathan had buried it, letting it grow until it consumed us. Rachel's eyes widened as she read over my shoulder. "This is bad, Lauren," she said, her voice low. "This isn't just Marcus. There's someone else involved." I nodded, my mind racing. Nathan hadn't just betrayed me, he'd gambled our future on a deal that went wrong, and now Marcus was the fallout. I thought of his ring, identical to Nathan's, a symbol of a bond I'd never known about. What else had Nathan kept from me? The doorbell rang sharp and sudden, and I froze, my heart pounding. Rachel stood, her hand on my shoulder. "Stay here," she said, moving to the door. I clutched the flash drive, my eyes fixed on the contract, its words blurring as fear crept back in. Whoever was out there, whatever Nathan had pulled me into, I'd stirred it up, and now it was coming for me. Rachel opened the door, her posture tense, and I braced myself, expecting Marcus or worse. But it was just a delivery guy holding a small package, his cap pulled low. "Lauren Miller?" he asked, glancing at his clipboard. I nodded, stepping forward, my hands still gripping the flash drive. He handed me a padded envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled in black ink. Rachel shut the door behind him, her eyes flicking to the package. "What's that?" she asked, her voice tight. I didn't answer, tearing open the envelope with unsteady fingers. Inside was a single item, my grandmother's sapphire necklace, its chain tangled, the pendant scratched but unmistakable. My breath caught, a mix of relief and dread washing over me. No note, no explanation, just the necklace like a taunt. I held it up, the gem catching the dim kitchen light, and Rachel's eyes widened. "Is that?" she started, but I cut her off with a nod, my throat too tight to speak. I sank onto a stool, the necklace heavy in my palm. Marcus had sent it back. But why? A warning, a power play. I thought of his smirk, his demand for $50,000. This wasn't a gesture of goodwill, it was a message, one I couldn't decipher. Rachel sat beside me, her hand hovering over mine, but I pulled away, needing space. The contract on her laptop screen still glowed, its numbers and dates, a map of Nathan's lies. He'd known about Marcus, about this debt, and let it spiral until it reached me. My phone buzzed again, and I flinched, half expecting another cryptic text from Nathan. But it was Sadie, her message short. "Nathan's a mess. He told me about Marcus. I'm so sorry, Lauren." I stared at the words, my chest hollow. A mess. He'd had every chance to tell me to trust me, and instead he'd sent me into this nightmare alone. I set the phone down, my fingers brushing the necklace, its scratches like scars on my heart. Rachel closed her laptop, the click loud in the quiet. "We should go to the police," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "This is too big, Lauren. Marcus, the contract, this necklace, it's not just about Nathan anymore." I looked at her, her face etched with worry, and felt a pang of guilt. She'd dropped everything to help me. But I wasn't ready to hand this over, not yet. "I need to talk to Nathan first," I said, my voice low. "He's coming home tomorrow. I need to hear it from him." She frowned, her lips parting to argue, but then she stopped, nodding slowly. "Okay," she said, "but I'm staying here tonight. You're not facing this alone." Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't fill the void Nathan had left. I slipped the necklace into my pocket, its weight pulling me down, and stood moving to the sink. The faucet dripped, a steady plink that matched the rhythm of my thoughts. I stared at the dishes piled there, remnants of a dinner we'd shared last week before Hawaii, before everything unraveled. I picked up a plate, its edge chipped, and ran it under the water, the cold shocking my fingers. The act was pointless. The house was a wreck, my marriage in pieces. But it was something to do, something to keep my hands from shaking. Rachel watched, silent, her presence steady, but not enough to quiet the storm in my head. Nathan's voice from our call replayed. "You've made this worse," and I gripped the plate harder, my knuckles white. Had I? Or had he, by building a life on secrets? The doorbell rang again, and I froze, the plate slipping from my hands. It hit the sink, cracking clean in two. Rachel was already moving, but I stayed put, my eyes fixed on the broken pieces. The delivery, the necklace, Nathan's panic, it was all closing in a noose I couldn't escape. I heard voices at the door. Rachel's and another, but they were distant, muffled by the blood rushing in my ears. I touched the necklace in my pocket, its scratches rough against my fingertips, and felt the last of my strength drain away. Nathan was coming home, but what was left to save? The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting soft stripes across the counter. I sat on a stool, a mug of tea steaming in my hands, its chamomile scent curling around me. The house was quieter now, the broken glass swept away, the worst of the mess tamed. Rachel had gone home after breakfast, her hug lingering like a promise to check in later. I was alone, but for the first time in days, the silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like space to breathe. I'd spent the night on the couch, too wired to sleep, the scratched sapphire necklace resting on the coffee table like a relic. Nathan would be home soon, his flight landing in a few hours, and we'd face whatever came next. But this moment, this pause was mine. I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through me, and let my eyes wander to the backyard. The patio chairs were still upright, the grass patchy but green, a small stubborn life pushing through. Yesterday I'd called a lawyer, a woman named Ellen, I'd found online, her voice calm and precise over the phone. I'd told her about Marcus, the contract, the break-in, and she'd agreed to meet us tomorrow to discuss charges. It was a step, a real one, toward untangling this mess. But more than that, it was my choice, not Nathan's. I set the mug down, my fingers brushing the table's worn wood, and felt a flicker of pride. I wasn't the woman who'd boarded that red-eye scared and lost. I'd faced Marcus, held my ground, and come out stronger. The doorbell chimed, soft but startling. I stood smoothing my sweater and opened the door to find my mother Diane standing there, her graying hair pulled back, a canvas tote slung over her shoulder. "I came as soon as I could," she said, her eyes scanning my face. I hadn't called her, hadn't wanted to worry her, but Rachel must have. I stepped aside, letting her in, and she set her tote on the counter, pulling out a loaf of homemade bread. "You need to eat," she said, her tone gentle but firm. We sat at the table, the bread sliced between us, its yeasty smell filling the room. Diane didn't ask about Nathan or the break-in, not right away. Instead, she talked about her garden, the roses she'd been coaxing to bloom. I listened, my shoulders loosening, grateful for the normalcy. But her eyes kept flicking to me, reading me in that way only mothers can. "You're different," she said finally, her voice quiet. "Stronger, maybe." I looked at her, surprised, my fingers pausing on the bread. "I don't feel strong," I said, my voice low. "I feel like I'm holding pieces together." She nodded, her hands folding around her mug. "That's what strength is," she said. "When I left your father after his drinking got bad, I thought I'd break. But holding those pieces, choosing what to keep, that's what saved me." Her words settled over me, heavy but warm like a quilt. I thought of my father, his apologies that never stuck, and how Diane had rebuilt her life anyway. She'd chosen herself not out of anger but necessity. I looked at the necklace on the coffee table, its scratches catching the light, and felt a shift. I wasn't just fighting for Nathan or our marriage. I was fighting for me, for the woman I wanted to be. Diane reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "Whatever happens with Nathan," she said, "you're enough. You always have been." Her words cracked something open, not pain but clarity. I squeezed her hand, my throat tight, and looked out at the backyard again. A sparrow landed on the fence, its wings fluttering, then still. I watched it, my breathing slow, and felt the first stirrings of peace, fragile but real, rooting in my chest. Diane left after lunch, her tote bag lighter, without the bread, her quiet presence lingering in the kitchen. I stood at the sink, washing our mugs, the water warm against my hands. The house was still, the afternoon light soft through the windows, and for a moment I let myself just be. Nathan's flight would land soon, and with it the weight of our reckoning. But right now, I wasn't bracing for a fight. I was finding my footing, one small step at a time. I dried my hands and walked to the living room, where the sapphire necklace still sat on the coffee table. I picked it up, its chain cool and tangled, and held it to the light. The scratches didn't hide its beauty, they made it real, a story of survival. I slipped it around my neck, the pendant settling against my collarbone, and felt a quiet resolve. It wasn't just my grandmother's anymore. It was mine, a piece of me I'd fought to reclaim. The front door creaked open and I turned my heart steady. Nathan stood there, his suitcase at his feet, his face drawn from travel and something heavier. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in days, he didn't look away. "Lauren," he said, his voice rough, like he'd been carrying words too long. I didn't move, didn't speak, just watched him, the necklace a soft weight against my skin. He stepped inside, closing the door, and set his bag down. "I owe you everything," he said, his hands hanging loose at his sides. "The truth, an apology, all of it." I knotted my throat tight, but I didn't rush to fill the silence. I'd spent days chasing answers, and now I could wait. We moved to the couch, sitting a careful distance apart, the space between us heavy with unspoken years. "I'm listening," I said, my voice low, steady. Nathan ran a hand over his face, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Marcus was my friend back when we started the business." He began, his words slow, deliberate. "We took a loan, a bad one, to flip a property. It went south, and I cut him out to save myself. He lost everything." His voice cracked, and I saw the guilt in his shoulders, the weight he'd carried alone. I listened, my hands folded in my lap, the necklace's pendant warm against my skin. He talked about the debt, the threats, how Marcus had tracked him down, demanding payment. "I sent you home to keep you out of it," he said, finally looking at me. "But I was wrong. I should have told you." His eyes were raw, searching, but I didn't rush to comfort him. I wasn't ready, not yet. Instead, I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street. A kid rode by on a bike, his laughter faint, and I let it ground me. "We're going to counseling," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Tomorrow, after we meet the lawyer." "No more secrets, Nathan." He nodded, his face tight with something like relief, but I didn't turn back. I needed this boundary, this clarity for me. I stepped outside, the air cool against my face, and sat on the porch steps. The neighborhood was alive, dogs barking, a lawnmower humming, but I felt apart from it, wrapped in a stillness I'd earned. I touched the necklace, its scratches a map of where I'd been. Nathan was inside, and we'd talk, more fight, more maybe heal. But right now, I was enough, sitting here, breathing slow, my heart quiet for the first time in days. Weeks passed, and the house began to feel like ours again. The broken windows were fixed, the furniture righted, but it was the small things that grounded me. A new coat of paint on the living room walls, pale yellow, chosen because it felt like sunlight. I stood in the kitchen now, stirring a pot of soup, the smell of thyme and carrots filling the air. It was Sunday, and this quiet was different, softer, like a blanket I'd chosen to wrap around myself. Nathan and I had started counseling twice a week with a woman named Dr. Harris, whose calm voice cut through our tangled words. We sat across from each other in her office, learning to listen, to say the hard things. He told me about the shame of his failed deal, how he'd buried it to protect me, only to hurt me worse. I told him about the fear, the betrayal, how I'd lost myself in his silence. It wasn't easy. Some sessions ended in tears, others in silence, but we kept going, building something new from the ashes. I set the soup to simmer and walked to the small desk I'd set up in the corner, a space just for me. A notebook lay open, its pages filled with my handwriting, thoughts, fears, moments I wanted to remember. I'd started journaling after the lawyer meeting where Marcus's charges were filed, a slow process that felt less like victory and more like closure. Writing was my way of sorting through it all, of claiming my voice. I picked up the pen, its weight familiar, and jotted down a line. Today I laughed without forcing it. The doorbell rang, and I smiled, knowing it was Sadie and her new husband, Tom. I'd invited them for dinner, a step toward mending the family ties strained by Nathan's secrets. Sadie stepped inside, her arms full of a dessert tray, her laugh bright as she hugged me. "This place looks good," she said, her eyes scanning the yellow walls. Tom nodded, setting a bottle of wine on the counter, and I felt a warmth I hadn't expected, like we were stitching something back together. We sat around the table, the soup steaming in our bowls, and talked about small things: Sadie's new job, Tom's bad golf game. Nathan joined us quieter than usual, but his hand brushed mine under the table, a gesture that felt honest, not forced. I watched Sadie's face, her ease, and realized how much I'd missed this family unguarded reel. The weight of Hawaii, of Marcus, of the break-in was still there, but it didn't define us anymore. After they left, I cleaned the dishes alone, the clink of plates soothing in its rhythm. Nathan was in the living room reading, and I didn't rush to join him. I needed this moment, this quiet act of care, to feel like myself. I dried my hands and walked to the window, looking out at the street. A street lamp flickered, casting a soft glow on the sidewalk, and I stood there, letting the world settle around me. I was still healing, still learning, but I was here whole in a way I hadn't been before. The next morning I woke early, the house still cloaked in pre-dawn gray. I slipped on a sweater and stepped onto the back porch, a mug of coffee warming my hands. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the neighbor's yard. I sat on the steps, watching the first light touch the leaves, and let my thoughts drift. Not to Marcus or the break-in or even Nathan, but to me, Lauren, 32, a woman who'd walked through fire and found her way out. I'd started running again, a habit I'd abandoned years ago. Not far, just a loop around the block, my sneakers pounding the pavement as the sun rose. It wasn't about fitness. It was about moving, feeling my breath, my strength, my choice. Each step was a reminder that I could keep going, even when the path was uneven. I'd come home, sweaty lungs burning, and stand under the shower, letting the water wash away the last traces of fear. Nathan and I were still learning each other, our conversations slower now, more honest. We'd sit on the couch some nights, sharing stories we'd never told, his childhood dreams of being a pilot, my secret wish to learn the guitar. We laughed sometimes, cried, but it was real, a foundation we were rebuilding brick by careful brick. I didn't know if we'd be the same, but I knew we were trying, and that was enough for now. I walked back inside, setting my mug on the counter, and noticed a small wooden box on the shelf, one I'd bought at a flea market last week. It was simple, carved with faint vines, and I'd filled it with slips of paper, things I was grateful for, moments that felt like light. A stranger's smile at the grocery store, the sound of rain on the roof. Nathan's hand finding mine in the dark. I opened it now, pulling out a slip. The way the sky looks at dawn. I smiled, tucking it back, and felt a quiet certainty settle in me. The lawyer called yesterday, saying Marcus's case was moving forward, a plea deal likely. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it closed a door one I didn't need to keep open. I'd forgiven Nathan, not all at once, but in pieces, late-night talks, shared silences, his effort to show up. More than that, I'd forgiven myself for the moments I'd doubted my worth, for the times I'd let fear speak louder than my heart. I sat at my desk, the notebook open, and wrote a new line. I am not my wounds. It was simple, but it held everything: the pain, the fight, the healing. I'd learned that trust is fragile, not just in others, but in ourselves. It breaks, it bends, but it can grow back stronger if we choose to tend it. I closed the notebook, my fingers lingering on its cover, and looked out the window. The world was waking steady and unhurried, and I was part of it, not just surviving, but living. What's a moment that taught you to trust yourself again? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this journey resonated with you, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to healing, to finding our way one step at a time.